What do you do when overnight a global pandemic plunges the organization you lead into uncertainty? Welcome to The Pivot. Hi, everybody. Welcome to The Pivot. I'm your host, Jen DeVore, Civic Impact Manager at the Economy League of Greater Philadelphia. I'm very excited to introduce our guest today, Natalie Nixon, who's an author and a incredible person whose career I've followed over the years and has had a couple of pivots of her own. She has a PhD in design management. She has been a hat designer. She has taught middle school English. She has been in Sri Lanka making bras and underwear for Victoria's Secrets. She's been back teaching at the university level after that. And today she helps people and organizations apply what she calls wonder and rigor to accelerate growth and business value as a creative strategist and president of her own consulting firm, Figure Eight Thinking. Today, we're going to talk to her about her book, Creativity Leap: Unleash Curiosity, Improvisation, and Intuition at Work, which will hit market on June 23rd. So by the time this episode airs, you will be able to buy this book, and we'll tell you how at the end. We're going to get a preview of some of the core concepts and theories that are presented here and talk about making the creativity leap as we continue to evolve as a society, a very timely conversation. So Natalie, if you want to join us on camera.
Absolutely. Hi, Jen.
Hi. I mean, when I think of pivot, I think of you and your expansive career right now. I mean, that's great. But so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Excellent. So, I loved reading this book. One of the things that struck me is the lexicon that's a part of it. Like, there's a core set of words that are connected to different ideas and values. Words like, of course, creativity, wonder, rigor, inquiry, improvisation. And they're throughout the book, which I thought was interesting, with kind of various definitions depending on how they're applied and different combinations of using the words together. Maybe it would be good just to kind of start with what is the creativity leap and how do all these words come together to help people make that move?
Well, so first of all, I really love the way you framed it as I'm offering a lexicon for us to use to be thinking about creativity. I hadn't thought about it, but I am just kind of re-juxtaposing different words together to help my own brain make sense of creativity. So I guess I would want to start with how I define creativity. I define creativity as our ability to toggle between wonder and rigor to solve problems. And in the very first pages of the book, I just kind of bring you through my thought processes of what it takes to make a leap, right? It requires vision. It requires faith because there's such uncertainty. It requires distilled focus on a goal in front of you. I talk about how it's impossible to leap backward. We can only leap forwards. And so that verb leap is really intentional, especially as you said, for these times. Gosh, I mean, in the past 3 months alone, we have all now grappled with this new reality of a global health pandemic, COVID-19. We in the United States of America are struggling with our inheritance of racism and how it keeps rearing its head in terms of police brutality among some police officers against Black American people. And, in the midst of the undercurrent through all of this is climate change, because there were 3 days, 2 weeks ago, where my husband, John, and we had just thought we had kind of gotten accustomed to the new normal of COVID-19, the new way we were working, when George Floyd was murdered, and that was a sucker punch. And then there was that crazy storm that came through. I live in the Mount Airy neighborhood of Philly, and it's actually something called a derecho. It's a series of storms. We lost power for 3 days. So the weather's changing. Summer doesn't quite feel like summer. There's a lot of adapting that we all have to do. And adapting means that we have to reorient, we've got to take stock, and we've got to be willing to make some changes that require what I call a creativity leap.
Absolutely. No. And it's times like these where, yeah, to your point, like we have no choice but think differently, right? Because everything that we know is changed. So I love too that, like, very straightforward, in your own words, you pose the question, why does this matter? And so I'd love to hear your response. Why does this matter? Why this topic, this book? And I know you wrote this before, our worlds have changed, but it's even more appropriate to say, why now?
Yeah, great question. So the reason why it mattered initially to me is because of what I was observing is something I call innovation churn. In my consulting practice with various companies and organizations, a lot of my clients were trying so hard to build cultures of innovation, to hire for innovation, to build innovative leaders. And I just had this creeping sensation that we were talking over and around each other using this word innovation. But I knew it wasn't enough for me to just be critical of that. I had to come up with an idea, a recommendation, a solution about how to actually move through the innovation churn and truly innovate. And so what I landed on was I discerned that we were actually starting in the wrong place. We were starting with the wrong questions. We actually had to first start with creativity. So the first initial impulse for why I needed to write this book was because in order to truly innovate, we have to start with the engine for innovation, which is creativity.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why this matters so much is because creativity loves messiness. Creativity thrives in mess, and complex challenges, complex systems. But by definition, a complex system is a situation, a scenario, a reality where there is no clear entry point and no clear exit point. Even when you zoom out a bit, it still looks like a gnarly ball of yarn. You have to zoom out even further for perspective. And so because creativity can be exercised through curiosity, by becoming better improvisers, by intuiting more, those are all three activities that we can do to make sense of the mess. So in times of complexity, such as we are in now, where there's tons of uncertainty, we like to use this term VUCA environments. Creativity is actually the best process to use to navigate complexity because creativity is a complex system.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And in the book, you talk about, like, standing on a street corner in Manhattan, right? And how I'm getting stressed just thinking about it, how overwhelming it can be between the subway and the lights. But the more you back out or zoom out, you see the patterns, the design, the thoughtfulness put into why everything is where it is. And
correct.
That nails it. And it's so interesting, like, to think about creativity. It's almost like innovation is a result of creativity. That was one of my biggest takeaways here.
Great.
But you also talk about so many people don't identify as creative. They say, I'm not a creative type, or that's, I'm not a creative. My brain works differently. But then also the importance of creative people in what's known as non-traditional creative roles too. And so what I thought great about this book is it's a little bit of like a workbook. Like, I'd love to hear your take on the different exercise and steps that you outline on how people that maybe identify as not creative or in one of those non-creative jobs can start to take that leap and make that stretch. Because I find that there's a lot of good general information and thoughts and theories, but then there's stuff you can actually do. There's exercises and activities.
Yes. Well, thank you for that. I love that you look at the book as a workbook. That means success, that I landed where I wanted to be, because as you mentioned, I was an academic for 16 years. I was a professor. I intentionally did not want this book to be academic-y. I wanted it to be a book that was engaging. It's an easy read. It's something you can refer back to, that's thought-provoking, but also has some really practical steps. So to your point and question about, when some of us may say, oh, I'm not a creative type because, fill in the blank, I don't know how to sing, or I'm not good at drawing, or I don't know how to dance, right? So what I talk about is that type of attitude about creativity just ghettoizes creativity in the arts. And that type of siloing and ghettoization of creativity in the arts is not fair to artists, and it's not beneficial to our society writ large, because to be human means we are designed to be creative. We know this if we have little children. We know this if we can think all the way back to when we were children. Our ability to improvise. My younger sister and I, on an afternoon where it had been raining on a day like this, when it had been raining in the morning, we would go outside, and one of the things that we would do, we would make mud pies, and we would be totally enthralled with that. We would decorate them with random leaves and little berries that we could find. It was in this world of pretend. And that's the piece that we dismiss. The older we get, the more educated we get, the more impressive our organizations become. But play is actually a method of experimentation, right? It's a method of inquiry. It's a method of discovery. So rather than the reason why we have only assigned creativity to artists is that artists are not only good at the wonder, at dreaming and asking big blue sky audacious questions and asking what if, artists are also really good with wrestling with the ambiguity. They sit with the discomfort. They don't try to avoid it. They bore through it. They're not only solutions focused, they're process focused. So to be an amazing scientist and a credible lawyer, as I found in my research and my interviews, an amazing plumber, cosmetician, or NASA scientist, you must be incredibly creative, because you are a person who's constantly toggling between the wonder and the rigor. So one of my goals with this book is to dispel anyone of this thing that they are not creative because they're not artistic. No, if you are needing to tinker and do some wondering and dreaming, and then do the rigor part, which is time on task, incessant practice, tons of discipline, you are absolutely exercising your creative competency.
Yeah, and more people, as we said, are having to do that maybe for the first time and are resistant to it, but out of necessity, we all have to rethink how we do these things. And we're starting to go back to, we're not going back to normal. That's one thing for sure, but we're starting to re-enter our workplaces, our social spaces, where we create and innovate. And so what do you see as the future of work, and how does it relate to, again, this book that you wrote months ago, without being able to predict where we are now in June 2020, but it's so connected. So I'd love to hear kind of what you think the next steps are going to be, and what the future, really it's what the future of work is. That's like such an exciting phrase to talk about now.
Yes, so a few things about the future of work. We are currently in what's called the fourth industrial revolution.
Yeah.
And in this fourth industrial revolution, technology is ubiquitous. It is everywhere. It's the robotics that surgeons use, the augmented reality that's in some of our smart devices. I have one in my office. I'm not going to say her name because it will start to squawk.
Going on.
Right. But the train has left the station, right? So there's a dystopian view of run for the hills, the robots will take over. There's a utopian view of, sit back, relax, things won't really change. Neither version is correct. Galit Ariel, who is going to be on my book launch day, we're going to have an 8 a.m. Facebook live chat. She's an augmented reality expert, and she talks about a heterotopia, a future of work state that is going to be a mixture of, there's going to be some downside because people have to upskill and reskill in their work. If you have a task-oriented job, computers and automation is going to take that over. That's the bad news. The good news is that there's more opportunity for us to increase our creative competency. The World Economic Forum has named creativity, right, as within the top 3 job skills for 2020 and beyond. I like to say that soft skills are hardcore. Soft skills like empathy, active listening, collaboration, critical thinking to solve complex problems. All of these are components of creativity. So the future of work will be one where technology is embedded in our lives, maybe even embedded in our bodies. I share a story sometimes of a colleague who is Estonian, who was working for SEB Bank. He was the head of innovation for the largest one of the largest banks in Estonia, Sweden, and they were experimenting with having chips embedded into people's the fleshy part of people's hands. Yeah. He had that, and he used it to scan his way into the building. It freaked me out.
Yeah.
People are already experimenting that. So there is going to be that level of seamlessness between tech and human, but the opportunity is for technology to amplify what it means to be uniquely human. I also think we're going to see, I think the overarching message here is that seamless boundaries, right? So we're also going to see seamless boundaries between working and learning. So Heather McGowan is someone who I also cite in the book. She is an expert on future of work. We used to work together at Philadelphia University, and she talks about how the future of work is the future of learning, which I completely agree with. There's going to be a lot more seamless boundaries. So we're seeing phenomenons like Masterclass, right? Where you can buy an annual subscription, have 8-minute doses of learning through practitioners and experts. COVID-19 will adversely affect the higher ed sector. And there will be some losers and there will be some winners out of COVID-19 for higher education. Young people are already questioning the Sage on Stage model. I've been predicting for some time that we're going to see a return to the apprenticeship model, where people will want to learn by doing. This could be a win-win for organizations and companies that want to be able to have younger, fresh, and not only younger, but different minds, right, who will learn by doing. So there's going to be a lot more fluidity in our future. I've been working on an article as well about how, a couple of centuries ago during the agricultural economy, and even for still some people today in our world, you woke up in the morning, you got yourself refreshed and dressed, you step over the threshold, and you're at work, right? Yes. Right? And now here we are back to that old normal of the boundaries between work and life being blurred for a different reason this time, because technology, digital, allows us to do that.
Yeah, no, and I used to hear this phrase or this saying a few years ago when tech really started to enter in every sector, that every company is a tech company, right? But now it's every company has to be a creative company.
That's right.
It has to be. So I mean that is so timely to where we are right now. And you mentioned some great people that are going to be part of your launch, which we're excited to hear about. And some of the people that you cited in the book, to me, that was one of my favorite parts, because, the Economy League, this work speaks very closely to me personally, but also my work at the Economy League. We consider ourselves a think and a do tank. So you have to have that research and analytics and impact studies that we do so well. But then we do something about it, right? And then we understand the issues and the challenges and the opportunities that arise from those studies, and we create programming to address it in a creative way. And part of that is absolutely bringing people together, diverse perspectives. And your book is a best practice in that, it seems, because there's so many different people that you talk to. Will Toms from Rec Philly, who I'm a big fan of. I really loved the interview with the perfumer Celine Barrel.
Yes.
Yeah, you talk to farmers, bankers. I mean, it really runs the gamut. So what led you to incorporate so many different people, and what was it like going on this talking tour and getting to hear so many interesting stories?
Well, first of all, Jen, I really thank you for having clearly you read the book, so I really appreciate that, first of all.
I might read it again. I mean, this time I'm stuck on it. Yeah.
That'll be awesome. So a couple of reasons why I interviewed so many diverse people. I interviewed over 50 people for the book. And I wouldn't call it a talking tour. I would call it a listening tour. I really went around to listen and understand how they're applying creativity. And I would say the impetus for that is in part just how I'm wired and in part my training. So what I mean by how I'm wired is I have always thrived in multidisciplinary environments and multidisciplinary learning. So even what I studied in college was Africana studies and cultural anthropology. I did a double major. And I was recently reflecting that studying Africana studies, where I took courses in philosophy and econ and poli-sci and Soch, it was my first entree into becoming a systems thinker. And I didn't realize that at the time, but we were looking at the diaspora of people of African descent through all of those different lenses. So you had to have a very integrative approach. And I love that. I love being curious about people who are different from me, understanding the ways that they approach something in my own life, in my own family, in my own society, and how it's different. And that's what cultural anthropology gave me. So then I moved forward, and many years later, I ended up earning this PhD in design management and really honed my teeth as a qualitative researcher. And so the interview process, the process of observing people at work is really what I've carried forward as well. And I always like to kind of see the patterns and the pull through in various situations. And so for me, when I talk to a range of people, it actually makes the insights more interesting because it's a fun challenge for me to see what are the differences and what are the commonalities between all these different folks.
Yeah, and I think too, it goes back to, towards the end of the book, you talk about these hybrid thinkers. And if you bring all these different perspectives to the table, it's like that's where that's formed. So
that's right.
I feel like I want people to read the book. I don't want to give away anything, but I really did enjoy this. And I do see it as a workbook and a guide for people that are considering their own pivot, which we talk about on the show all the time, for people that are trying to figure out the future of their work as we rebuild and we reopen as a city and a country. So thank you so much for writing this and for sharing, a little bit more in depth about, as you said, the why this, like, why does this matter? So we appreciate that. How can people learn more? How can they buy the book? How can they attend your now I'm sure this is not what you imagined for your book launch, right? But but your virtual book launch. Just tell us everything about how we can get involved.
Thank you, Jen. So people can go to figure8thinking.com. We update the website pretty regularly to alert people of events. So for example, for the June, you already said that this will be aired, I guess, after June 23rd, but just a few days, we're doing some really fun conversations, which will be on my YouTube channel. So a great way to be attuned to some of the chats, if you don't make them, is to definitely subscribe to my YouTube channel. So if you just go to YouTube, type in Natalie Nixon, that will come up. And what I do on that YouTube channel is I post tips, I post webinars, I post samples of other talks that I've given. And just to kind of highlight, even though it may be in the past once this airs, the people who I will be talking to for the celebration of the launch of the Creativity Leap include John Maeda, who is a rock star and at the intersection of tech and design. Yep. John Maeda is now the Chief Experience Officer at Publicis Sapient. He used to be the president of RISD, the Rhode Island School of Design, and then made his way into corporate America. And so I've always admired him from afar. So we actually had a really dynamic conversation that aired on LinkedIn. You can find that talk on my LinkedIn page and John's LinkedIn page. On the 23rd in the morning, I'll be having a coffee chat with Galit Ariel, who is an Israeli woman who lives in Toronto, Canada, and she is an augmented reality expert. So she's really cool. At lunchtime at 12 p.m. Sorry, I don't know if I said that was a Facebook Live. Also, that's at 8 a.m. And at noon, we're doing a Facebook Live with Faye Wu. Faye is a digital marketing expert. We were having a lunchtime chat with her at noon. And then at 9 p.m. Eastern time, these are all Eastern times. Yeah. If you're from Philly, you probably have heard of this really cool global DJ named King Britt. King used back in the day, King used to spin at Silk City, which is now a diner. But Silk City used to open up late at night, where people would club and party all night. It was awesome. And
we still do.
Yeah. I'm just older now, right? But King has worked with Jill Scott. He's worked with The Roots. He's worked with Michael Poyser, and he's now a professor out in California. And we're going to do an after dinner cocktails spinning conversation session. That's on the 23rd. And then wrapping it all up with an amazing conversation with the incredible Seth Godin. And that's going to be on June 25th at 12 p.m. LinkedIn Live and Facebook Live. So I'm just really grateful for so many people who are going to celebrate with me. And it's really an opportunity for me to ask them, what's the creativity leap you have made? What are the creativity leaps you're thinking about making? So it will inspire a range of other people. My goal, Jen, is to start a movement of creativity leaping. I really want all people to embrace their creativity, because it is not something that belongs only to a special group of people. It belongs to all of us. It's just a matter of exercising it as a competency so that we can really live our lives to the fullest.
Oh, I love that. What a great note to end on. Thank you so much, Natalie. I really appreciate your time and your thinking, right, of how it's been applied to this book. So this was our guest, Natalie Nixon, and you can buy her book, The Creativity Leap, and learn more all about it at figure8thinking.com. Just a reminder, you're watching The Pivot. I'm your host, Jen DeVore. With the Economy League of Greater Philadelphia. You can watch this episode and more at economyleague.org/thepivot. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.